Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into the nitty-gritty of a fascinating study. It's got a bit of a mouthful of a title. Mitigation of air pollution and corresponding impacts during a global energy transition toward 100% renewable energy system by 2050.
Quite a title.
It is, but don't worry, we'll just call it the study as we go along. Now you, our listeners, are here because you're all about getting to grips with complex topics and doing it quickly.
And thoroughly.
Exactly. And that's our mission today. This study is all about a pretty crucial topic. It's about how our energy choices, especially those dirty fossil fuels, directly impact our health.
Right. We all know about the pollution they cause.
Yeah, and we're talking about serious stuff here, like heart disease, strokes, respiratory issues, and even cancer.
And let's not forget, people living in cities often face the worst of it.
Exactly. They're on the front lines of this pollution battle. But there's a glimmer of hope. We've all seen those places where they're really embracing renewable energy.
And the air quality seems to be improving.
Right. So this study tackles that head on. It takes a hard look at where we stand today with all those nasty emissions from the energy sector. You know, those new NOx, SOx, and those tiny but dangerous particles, PM2.5 and PM10.
The stuff we don't want in our lungs.
Exactly. And then it fast forwards to 2050 and imagines a world where we've completely switched to 100% renewable energy.
A pretty ambitious scenario.
It is, and the study delves into the potential impacts. We're talking big reductions in those harmful emissions, fewer people dying prematurely because of polluted air.
And a lot less economic damage.
Right, because pollution costs us all in more ways than one. So are you ready to dive into the details?
Absolutely. Let's go back in time a bit first, around 2015. The study paints a pretty stark picture of how much pollution we were pumping into the atmosphere back then.
Okay, so let's start with the numbers. How bad was it? Give us the lowdown.
Well, get this, the global energy sector was spewing out a staggering 137 million tons of new NOx every year.
137 million. Wow.
And it doesn't stop there. Add another 125 million tons of SOx, almost 21 million tons of PM2.5.
Those tiny particles.
Exactly. And then top it off with 25.5 million tons of PM10.
That's a hard number to wrap your head around. I mean, where was all this coming from?
It was a real mix of sources, actually. When it came to NOx, a big chunk was from transportation handports, our cars, trucks, trains, and ships.
Makes sense. All those vehicles burning fuel.
Right. Now for SOx, it was mainly coal-fired power plants and heating systems, along with those big ships again.
Coal, the usual suspect.
You got it. And for those PM2.5 and PM10 particles, coal was definitely in the mix again, but traditional biomass also played a big role.
Traditional biomass, you mean like burning wood or dung for cooking and heating?
That's right. It's still a common practice in many parts of the world, particularly in homes.
So this air pollution problem, it's not just about big industries, it's about people's daily lives too.
Absolutely.
And geographically, where were these pollution hotspots in 2015?
Well, for NOx, the study shows that developed countries and those big emerging economies were really pumping it out.
No surprise there, I guess.
Right. For SOx, the main culprits were Northeast and South Asia, along with Eastern Europe and the CIS countries. Oh, and we can't forget Saudi Arabia and South Africa. They were up there too.
And what about those fine particles, the PM2.5 and PM10?
Densely populated areas, especially in Northeast and South Asia, were hit the hardest. It's a combination of factors, lots of people, heavy industry, and that traditional biomass burning.
A recipe for bad air quality. So let's talk about the human cost of all this pollution. What did this study find about premature deaths in 2015?
The numbers are pretty grim, to be honest. This study estimates that a shocking 5.2 million people died prematurely that year because of air pollution from the energy sector.
5.2 million. That's a massive number.
It is. And the economic cost was also huge, about 4.6 trillion euros globally. That's the price we were paying for our reliance on dirty energy.
Okay, that sets the scene for 2015. Not a pretty picture. Now let's fast forward to the heart of this study. They modeled a huge global shift to 100% renewables by 2050. How do they go about doing that?
They use something called the LUT Energy System Transition Model. Think of it as a really sophisticated computer program that simulates this transition across every major sector: power, heating, transport, even things like desalination.
So it's not just about electricity generation.
No, it's about how we use energy in every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
And here's the key. It's a cost optimization model.
Meaning
It figures out the cheapest way to make this huge transition while still making sure we have enough energy for everything we need.
Okay, so it's not just some pie-in-the-sky idea. It's grounded in real-world economics. What are some of the key things this model takes into account?
Well, first off, it assumes a major shift towards electrification. That means using electricity for things we currently do with fossil fuels, like driving our cars or heating our homes.
More electric everything.
Pretty much. And secondly, it sees solar and wind power taking center stage as the primary energy sources.
Makes sense. They're abundant and getting cheaper all the time.
Exactly. The model also incorporates energy storage because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow.
All right, we need to be able to store that clean energy for when we need it.
Exactly. And it factors in things like connecting different energy sectors, like using excess solar power to heat water and upgrading the grid to handle all this renewable energy flowing across vast distances.
Okay, so a highly electrified world powered by sun and wind. It's a pretty big departure from how we do things today. So with this massive shift, what happens to all those pollution numbers we were talking about? What does the study say about emissions in 2050?
Hold on to your hats, because the projections are remarkable. This study says that by 2050, overall emissions from the energy sector will plummet by almost 92% compared to those 2015 levels.
92%, that's huge. Are we talking about all those pollutants, MOx, SOx, the particulate matter?
Across the board. NOx emissions are projected to drop by 83.5%, which is still significant. SOx is almost completely wiped out with a 99.8% reduction. And PM2.5 and PM10 emissions are also drastically reduced by 96.7% and 99.4%, respectively.
Wow. So we're talking about dramatically cleaner air. What's driving these incredible reductions?
Well, the biggest factor is simply phasing out fossil fuels in power generation and heating.
No more burning coal and gas.
Exactly. And then there's the electrification of transport, with electric cars, buses, trucks becoming the norm. As we stop burning all that dirty fuel, those emissions just disappear.
It makes perfect sense. But I'm curious, the study does mention some remaining emissions in 2050. Where are those coming from if we've gone 100% renewable?
Good question. Even in this scenario, there are a few stubborn sources of emissions. For NOx, the main culprit is actually aviation. Yeah, it's really tough to find truly zero-emission solutions for long-haul flights. We might see some synthetic fuels being used, but they still produce some NOx. And for those particulate matter emissions, PM2.5 and PM10, they're mostly projected to come from modern biomass and biogas.
So we might still be burning some stuff, but in a much cleaner way.
Exactly. The study highlights the use of advanced pollution control technologies, so even the remaining emissions will be minimized as much as possible.
Okay, so that's the emissions side of things. But I think our listeners are really keen to hear about the human impact. What does this all mean for people's health? Specifically, what about those premature deaths?
Well, remember that grim figure of 5.2 million premature deaths in 2015?
Hard to forget.
This study projects that number will plummet to just 150,000 by 2050. That's a reduction of 97%.
97%? Are you serious?
It's pretty incredible, right?
Right.
It basically means that millions of lives could be saved every year just by cleaning up our energy system.
That's an amazing prospect. And wasn't coal responsible for a huge chunk of those deaths back in 2015?
You're absolutely right. The study estimated that coal combustion alone accounted for roughly half of those 5.2 million deaths. So getting rid of coal has a massive impact on saving lives.
It really highlights the direct link between energy choices and human health.
It does.
Were there any other interesting trends in premature deaths during this transition to 2050?
One thing that stood out was related to transport. While emissions from transport are projected to fall significantly in the long term, the study suggests that deaths related to transport might actually go up a bit until around 2035.
Why would that be? I thought we were transitioning to cleaner transportation.
We are, but it takes time.
Hmm.
The study suggests this temporary increase is because we'll still be relying on those gas-guzzling ships and planes in the early stages of the transition. Electrification takes time, especially for those long-haul sectors.
Makes sense. It's like a bump in the road before we see the full benefits of cleaner transport. Okay, so we've talked about cleaner air and healthier lives, but this transition also has a big economic impact, right? What did the study say about those damage costs?
They're projected to fall dramatically. We're talking about an 88.5% reduction, from 4.6 trillion euros in 2015 down to 529 billion euros in 2050.
That's a massive saving.
It is. It represents all the money we won't be spending on healthcare, lost productivity, and other costs associated with air pollution.
I'm curious, though. The study mentioned a possible stabilization or even a slight increase in those damage costs before they start to decline. What's up with that?
You're really paying attention. That's because as countries develop and their economies grow, People tend to place a higher value on health and well-being.
So even if pollution is decreasing, the economic value of those health improvements might be going up.
Exactly. It's a bit of a complex interplay of factors. But ultimately, as the pollution reductions really kick in, the damage costs will start to fall significantly.
Okay, that makes sense. And did they break down those damage costs by sector like they did with the deaths?
They did. And guess what? Those coal-fired power and heating systems, they were the biggest culprits in 2015, accounting for a huge chunk of those damage costs.
No surprises there.
But the good news is, as we transition away from coal, those costs essentially disappear. This study also points out a potential temporary rise in costs related to transport, especially shipping, before those cleaner fuels and electrification take hold.
So some short-term challenges before the long-term gains. It seems like this study paints a pretty clear picture of the benefits of this energy transition. Does it line up with what other researchers have found?
It does. The study actually mentions other research that has found similar benefits, things like improved air quality and better health outcomes from switching to renewable energy.
So there's a consensus building around this.
Exactly. And this study in particular emphasizes that it provides a really detailed look at how these changes might play out, both geographically and over time.
Okay, so we're not just talking about vague predictions. This is granular stuff. Now, let's be fair and balanced here. Did the study mention any limitations or uncertainties?
It did. Transparency is important. One limitation they acknowledged is that their method for estimating mortality, the intake fraction approach, is a bit simplified.
Simplified in what way?
Well, it doesn't take into account all the nuances of local conditions, like weather patterns, the landscape, or the presence of other pollutants that can interact with those emitted by the energy sector.
So the real-world health improvements could vary from region to region.
Exactly. And the other limitation they mention is the inherent difficulty of putting an economic value on health risks and human life.
Right, how do you put a price tag on a life saved?
Exactly. They often use a willingness to pay approach, which is based on what people say they're willing to pay for health improvements. But that doesn't always reflect how people actually behave or the true societal value of a healthy life.
Okay, so some things to keep in mind when interpreting the numbers. But overall, the study seems pretty optimistic, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. This study, Mitigation of Air Pollution and Corresponding Impacts During a Global Energy Transition Towards a 100% Renewable Energy System by 2050, offers a compelling argument for a global shift to renewables by mid-century.
And their main takeaway.
That this transition has the potential to dramatically reduce air pollution, saving millions of lives and trillions of euros in the process.
It's a pretty powerful message. We're not just talking about saving the planet here. We're talking about cleaning the air we breathe and improving our own health.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into mitigation of air pollution and corresponding impacts during a global energy transition towards a 100% renewable energy system by 2050, and take a deep breath of hopefully cleaner air, I want to leave you, our listener, with a question. Given these incredible projections, what do you see as the biggest hurdles to achieving this 100% renewable energy future? And what role can individuals and policymakers play in making it happen? It's a conversation worth having.
Absolutely. We all need to be part of this solution. And this study, Mitigation of Air Pollution and Corresponding Impacts During a Global Energy Transition Towards a 100% Renewable Energy System by 2050, provides the evidence we need to start taking action now.